record and then see.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
now does that, what happens?
Yeah. No, I just continued and said yes, and that's okay. It's all right anyway.
Okay.
I think it's only one. Yeah.
I can edit that bit out. I can send it to you.
Oh, beautiful. That would be good. I'm not going to, yeah. I want to pick your brain about this anyway.
That's fine. No problems. Okay, we'll start now.
Yeah.
Hi, Rachel. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm really grateful for your time because I know how busy you are with your psychology practice. Where are you based these days?
I'm based, so we have a clinic in South Melbourne, and our team of psychologists there. So very blessed with our location, and I personally keep half my days telehealth. So this is actually home office, and then I do half the days at the clinic as well.
Oh, nice. That's a good mix. Has that been something that's come about since COVID?
Yeah, really good mix because a lot of the people out there really like the convenience of telehealth, and if they can still feel like this medium and mode kind of works for them, great. And then I've got my fur baby, my dog, at home, so it makes it a little easier. And he's actually been an absolute gorgeous soul, but also an unofficial therapy dog. And one of my clients said like a volunteer, and I'm like, yeah, he's like that.
What kind of breed is he?
He's a beagle, so he's actually under the table now. And sometimes if I do telehealth, he likes to pop his head up from time to time, like here, and then second therapist. If not, in the clinic, the clients always request that he comes in because he knows whenever I'm in a conversation with someone, it's our time, and then he's doubled down and gone to sleep.
Oh, isn't he sweet?
Yeah.
Do you manage to get any swimming in these days at all?
Yeah, yes. We are trying to keep our little swimming group once a week. You know how it goes at times, we've fallen off a little bit, but our swimming group did the interesting freezing cold bay swims when COVID lockdown was happening, and then the pools were all shut. So a lot of the guys in that group wanted to go swimming anyway. So we persevered. And then, yeah, I prefer the pool though.
Oh, absolutely. Me too. That was pretty cold in the bay over winter, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely freezing. Like if it wasn't that funny, I don't know how much I would have done it. You just have to laugh because it is quote unquote, in their words, it's like daggers in your face how cold. It's just the face burns, and then you've got to push past that. And the guys wanted us to swim and wanted all of us to swim. So one of them brought wetsuits for all of us. So we were like, had to do it.
Look, the good thing is that you feel good afterwards.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If it wasn't that funny, it's such a mood boost because you're so proud of yourself for doing it. But then at the end of the day, it's an absolutely hilarious, if not funny, experience to do it with your teammates.
Oh, and I always felt so pompous around other people who didn't do it. Like I was really proud of myself for actually getting in the cold water and suffering, and I thought that was like a really good thing. And
yeah, and then you watch other people in the bay and you sort of think, how are they not, like if they're in the water and they've already acclimatized, and you sort of think, how are they not freezing? Because you're standing there just like barely making it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's take things back to the beginning of your swimming career. I first met you as a little 11 or 12-year-old when you turned up in year 7 at Firbank where I was working. I think you were in my PE class or my homeroom or something. And I know you came to the school through the swimming coach that was there at the time, Elwyn Barrett.
Yeah.
How did that all come about that you got yourself there and you started off probably more serious swimming than you had been doing?
Yeah, wow. I mean, I love that question. It brings me back of like a whole world away.
Yeah.
I think I was 13 at the time. I'm a swimmer who I would probably say I'm a very Melbourne-based, if not loyal Victorian. I've been to many of the Melbourne-based clubs. So prior to that, I was at a lot younger Water Lions, and I spent my time initially, or first sort of club experience was there. Firbank I had no idea about it. Obviously, truly guided by parents. I was lucky enough to get a full scholarship there, so because of swimming, and it gave me that opportunity, and then started that. Alwyn at the time, she was really, if not the only or one of the only female coaches around. So that was a big factor in the decision, and it wasn't something I'd ever really thought about, but it worked out really well.
Yeah. How many years did you stay with her before you moved on?
13. I mean, essentially, if most of my high school, I went to Vic Centre at 16 years of age. So just sort of, it was when I was starting to, with Alwyn, I remember I had won like gold medal age national medals, and that was kind of my big achievement then. And then as that kind of progressed, as I went to Vic Centre at 16.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the Firbank side was, sorry, just
please do. Yeah.
They were the only club at that age anyway, and you know how the swimming world is. They were strict on 6 sessions a week, and then you do your gym complementary. I think that was where I also started gym, which was like 3 times a week. Comparative to all those other big clubs, people in the same age were training anywhere from 8 to 10 sessions a week, and they just did not believe that I was swimming 6 times a week.
Yeah, that was a real thing from Elwyn. I think that was her sort of philosophy, because Lily Frame actually started off with Elwyn, and before she went to, she was obviously with Waterlines as well before that, but she was on those 6 sessions, and when she went to the Institute, she had to step up a little bit more. So
I never did a double before, like double sessions on a day before Vic Centre, I think, and as I got a bit older.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Maybe that sort of contributed to the longevity of your career, because you know, sort of on that World Cup circuit from the time you were 14 right through to 26, and that really, back in the early 2000s, that's a really long career.
Yeah, and I think a few things like obviously contributed to that, because, you know, in swimming I had heard along the way, like a change is as good as a holiday, and just when you feel like you're stagnant or stuck, an environmental shift is maybe what you need. And a few of those things gave that to me. And, you know, at that age, there's already so much going on, trying to manage school and training. And, you know, I understand the benefits of double sessions. I would have done it had it been posed to me. But I also understand that I probably just had an easier balance that I didn't have to think about, and I could push in swimming, homework, and manage everything else. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us what it was like on that World Cup circuit and the short course World Championships that you went to representing Australia. What was that like at the time?
Best. It was the absolute, the very last one I did was, I would say, time of my life. Best ever. But I'm actually I'll probably start full circle back, because I remember the very first trip that I got on. I actually think it was somewhere around, I was even 16, or maybe just on that cusp time that you're talking about, 14 to 16. The first trip I ever made, it was the European tour of the World Cup, which included Paris, Stockholm, and Berlin, Germany. And that was like the highly desirable one. And it was really interesting, because the things that I remember, and I mean, if he's listening, that, you know, it was the first team I was ever on. It was Thorpe, and Ian Thorpe was on my team. And as a little kid, you're sort of just, I didn't even know what to think, you know, the person you admire, the best in our field. And he was such a beautiful teammate. And it was funny, I was so young, and he would always call me Miss Go, and I just loved it. Or that he would treat you like just another teammate, and you learn all these things, but, you know, you learn from your teammates, and it was so invaluable. But that trip, the first leg was Paris in France. 16 team members, including staff, I think. 14 or 15 of us got gastro and food poisoning on the very first leg, except for Thorpe. And we were all, it was like a very all I really remember is just being sick with our team with food poisoning or gastro, and the managers and the teams, the staff couldn't necessarily look after us either because they were unwell, and we were just getting boiled rice and Coke delivered to our hotel room.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know, like a lot of the teams, they all stay, every country stays in like particular hotels. So they'd have these buses go, and then they would see the Australian team. We would have to just get up and it was freezing at the time, but get up and just maybe go for a walk so that you're being a little bit mobile. So we've got those like deck coats on, freezing outside, wrapping up. We look so ill, and then the rest of the world and countries are just going to the meets, and they're just like, what happened to them?
Oh, the trials and tribulations of traveling in a swimming team.
Oh, I know it was hotel food. I'm pretty sure it was an hotel, and because we got there one day earlier and ate different food to the rest of the team, and it just set off a spiral of events.
Yeah, that's not good. So, illness aside, what was a race that you remember from that time that you think you executed really well?
Always, actually, one particular memory. It was, for some reason in swimming, you know that people have fast pools, and some reason you just have fast races. The Berlin leg and that pool particularly was a fast pool. And so my main event across the legs, and the last stint that I did, it was 9 weeks, and we traveled to all the World Cup legs. It was 100 back. So preferably my event is a 50 backstroke, but the 100 back was always the one that, to execute the race right, there was just a few more things that I had to always be on top of. Like a 50 back I could do so automatic, hit or miss. It's, hundredths of a second each time, but somewhat consistent. 100 back goals, I just wanted to be hitting more. So it's probably the 100 meters backstroke in Berlin. One race really stands out to me. I think it was the very last leg that I did, and it was through my post-accident difficult time and having to come back. And I will never forget this saying, because it's a thing that I've carried with me through my life, but it actually came from Grant Stolley, and he was my assigned coach because I didn't have a home coach at the time. Traveling, and because our group had traveled the whole way through, you had different coaches and different athletes that would just come in and do legs, and he took me under his wing at that time. And I had been setting the fastest 100-meter backstroke that year time through the whole series, and I had one of my really tough competitors, and you have those moments pre-race where you need to get your mind in the right space. You need to get your body in the right space, and you might see people's nerves a little bit more, their negative thoughts creeping in. And I sort of knew exactly how I needed to execute it. And it was just, you'd go to your coach more like a routine. So I went to him more like a pre-race check-in. And it was really interesting because I think the conversation went something around, don't know why, like, you have nothing to question about yourself or your race. Everything you've done up to this far has shown in your times and execution. And I might have done 6, 10, like so many 100 backstrokes on that tour. And he just said to me, back yourself. And he's like, just back yourself. And I can't tell you how much that just resonated with me.
Yes.
In that moment, because everything almost just fell into place as soon as he said it. And I had this, back yourself. No questions, no nothing. I sat with it, and it was that perfect timing. And it's funny, in my life and through any other race beyond that, I've carried that with me because it was such a certain but self-assured kind of moment. And then the race went, I think I did the fastest time I had set across the whole tour so far. Time-wise, I'm going to go for a mental blank here, but I was wanting something like, it was under a 50. So by the time I finish, oh God, you're gonna be like, Rachel, why can't you remember your time?
No, I don't think that.
But it was under like a 50 at the time. I think it was a 57.9 or something like that. And then towards the end of my career, it was 57.1 or under that. But you had, when you're just on the cusp of a 0.00 and then getting the second below. So I'm a little far removed, excuse me, from having all the time logged in my mind.
That's okay. How did you become such a specialist at short course? Because I know that you were so dominant in that sort of field over that time.
It's so interesting when people say that to me, because I know that is how I raced, and I would entirely agree, because for most of my career I then had that, and then I was sort of like, well, how can I be so good at this? And I wanted to transfer that over to be equivalent in the long course races. But I think, many variables shift and change from short course to long. Honestly, that came about when I was at Vic Centre with Popey, so Ian Pope. I knew I had incredible underwater skills. It was just a favorite thing that I've always had. And actually, start of that probably was Alwyn. She was the coach who said to us, 6 kicks off every wall, and without question, every single wall that you do. And I remember there was like a choice in my mind. Every wall that I do had to be 6 kicks. And then the times that you're like, oh, but I'll do 4 and a 5, it's still a choice to say, well, I'll do 6.
Yes.
And I adopted that from her. Popey, then I knew underwaters, I was great. And then it was I think more solidified as soon as I had gone to the US.
Yes.
Because the US is short course yards, it's racing all the time. But over there, I really honed in on developing power and skills, because you can gain so much time just on a turn, on a breakout, on skills-based work. And it does require a little bit more like strength, power and control. And I spent more of my time in the gym, and that's where I then honed in those skills there to then put that all together in short course work.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm glad you brought up about your time in the US, because I was going to move on to that. You started off at Monash Uni, and then you ended up at Auburn University, which is a very famous swimming school in the US. How did that all come about?
I was at a time in my life, and I'm sure everyone goes through this in their swimming career as well, really stagnant. And I think it actually may have come from Popey. We had difficult conversations in there. You always have such a close relationship with your coach that, it's not always perfect. And it was a time where I think I was struggling with uni, social life, finding a balance, and swimming. And I just felt stuck. The times just kept, they weren't moving. And then even family life. So all together, it was just a point in my life that I knew I needed something else. And I was training with Brett Hawke, and he was sort of, I was still younger, 16, and he was the Olympian, and had gone to Auburn. And I just didn't even think to connect the two. And I'm very, as you know me, I'm quite independent in wanting to earn something out of my own merit. So I wouldn't have felt it was as worthy had he got a spot for me at Auburn. I sort of needed to go down this pathway and just find the places myself.
Right.
Popey did connect me, because he is great friends with David Marsh, who was the head coach at the time. And he connected me with him. I actually started conversations in universities, and if you know much about the American system, I was even talking to essentially any coach, any university, not knowing my ability essentially comparative to them. So I was talking like Division 3 universities in like Arkansas and other places that, were not at the level that I was at. And because yards time, you were supposed to convert, a short course meters time or a long course meters time to yards, and it just doesn't really add up too much.
No, that's right.
And I've got an interesting story about that, because I think I was Cal Berkeley. I think I had spoken at some point to Terry McKeever, which was Natalie Coughlin's coach. And everyone just kept saying to me I was too slow, like, because they were going off conversion time. And I don't know. So essentially, as a young 16, I was closer to 19 when I moved, but at that age, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was just accepting what people had said to me. And then the other competitive school was University of Georgia. So if it was Auburn and Georgia, they were number 1, number 2 in the US in the NCAA. And then the coach there, Frank Bush, I think, Frank Bush, he said to me over the phone, I just specifically remember the words, "You're too slow for our team," or "You're too slow."
You'll show me.
And you always log these things that people tell you. And it was funny because I went mid-season as a pickup. So I got a spot at Auburn. Matthew Targett was already there. He was another Vic Centre guy. And he was really great in sort of educating me and supporting me and helping me through that process. And he obviously wanted another Australian on his team as well. Went there in December, went on their Christmas training camp in the Bahamas, which they do once every 4 years, and it was absolutely phenomenal. NCAAs came around in March, and I ended up winning that year, and our team actually ended up winning. It was an absolute fairy tale story because that is such a memorable moment in my life. But obviously because I had been picked up by them, and we won the entire NCAA competition by 3 points, and it was just this mass game of numbers. And it's one of those, when people tell you you're too slow, and then they saw me come in and I ended up winning 100 backstroke. And all the events, I guess it's kind of like nor did I know, nor did they know who I was either.
They're thinking, who is this person? And you've come in and stormed the field. That's it. I love that story. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Go Frank Bush, didn't you?
Yeah, I know. And then obviously you have your conversations, you say hi, and you have that level of respect, and nothing against him, because as he would not know, who I was. And you can just be another Australian swimmer who is interested. And if you're not, the hard part in swimming, if you're not like the world champion already, they don't necessarily know who you are.
Yeah, it's a really difficult way. I mean, that was early days, I suppose. Now it's a little bit more, it's easier because we've got social media and people can sort of, get to know swimmers overseas. So I suppose that makes the whole process a little bit easier these days. But that's amazing. And what was that environment like to train with those with that team, with David Marsh, and who was the women's coach? It
was Dorsey Tyranny Walker at the time. Right. The coaches have, like I always explain to people, that although you've got your head men's, head women's coach, or head coach overall, you essentially have like 6 to 8 coaches on deck at any one time, because you've got your other assistant coaches, and if you did a backstroke session, I've got specific ones, and then if we did a team session, they're allocated lanes, and it's like you're so well looked after in a coaching perspective that you just don't you just don't fall through the cracks.
Yes. Yeah.
In a really good way. Yeah.
Yeah. And do they divide that program up into sprinters, middle distance and long distance? Yep.
Within a week, yes. And it depends on like the period of training. So I was in the sprint group, and we would have different kind of sessions, because this is where, when I think Brett Hawke kind of came in and had a bit of a sprint session. So instead of a 2-hour block, 1 hour block would be like a power gym session, and a 1 hour power session, just pure sprinting for that session, and really working on the top speed all the time. And that was my absolute favorite sessions every week. I'd be like so happy to be doing those sessions, but you're just racing. Whereas every week I had, like in a schedule, we would know, and I could even tell you now, we'd have doubles in a heavier block, doubles Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. In an average training block, it was doubles Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I liked that we were so on top of the schedule. In Australia, and I think you heard me say it before, I knew that I'd be like, I train 6 sessions a week. I train 10 sessions a week. When I was in the US, it wasn't ever about the number. It was, today is Monday, I've got a double. Tomorrow is Tuesday, I've got a swim session and gym. And no one cared about how many sessions you do in a week. It's just training. It's sort of a different environment and language that they use. And I mean, there is nothing like it. Like, you asked me what was it like. The hard part is, I mean, I wish our sporting world of swimming and our sporting world in general could almost take that environment and bring it here, because it cultivates such a healthy team environment, but also success. Because so what I was saying, for example, in a week, I would have a stroke session, which was backstroke. I'd have a women's session. Then I would have our sprint sessions. And then we'd always, every Wednesday night or one night a week, we had a team set. And team sets were so challenging. And if you had 60 to 70 swimmers, let's say MSAC was our pool, they would put the bulkhead in the middle. We all do the same set, same cycle, but we created this atmosphere where you were just 60, 70 of us are just yelling for each other and racing. And, you know, even if it's 10 100s max, everyone goes same time. Coaches are all over times, but the atmosphere is absolutely incredible. And that team environment in backstroke, because our backstroke group was so competitive, if I was having an off day and I would line from 1 to 8, all 8 lanes across the pool, and we'd all be going together. So if I was having an off day on like 1050s max repeats or whatever set was going on, and I'm essentially supposed to be the fastest and touching first, if I have an off day, I will have 5, 6, 7 other people outdoing me. So it keeps you lifting and on top of your training, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So you just can't let it up, which means training is next level, performance is next level, but you're so invested in it. And then they keep you there, because your teammates don't say, oh, I beat you, haha. It's kind of like, come with me, do it with me. Like, if you're falling off the bandwagon, it's like, come on, Rachel, you can do this. And that's the entire culture that we created. And it was amazing.
Oh, I love that. I love that culture, because that is different to probably the culture that we have here in Australia. Although I think with what's happening in Queensland in the high performance programs at the moment, they're sort of trying to replicate that. So Michael Bowles' program's got so many Olympians. So, you know, and they seem to have that really good team sort of going, you know, that sort of philosophy. So let's hope that we can get that here in Australia as well.
Yeah, and it's hard work to get that, meaning it's temperament, it's leaders who truly believe in helping someone younger. Also, the head coach has to then model that, because I knew that I was someone, one of my closest friends now is Grace Lowe, and yes, we were mistaken in the swimming world as the same person over and over again. We still laugh. But she was 5 years younger than me. And when I had moved back from the US to Vic Center, I actively took that mindset with me. And I would have rather had succeeded with her than me do it on my own without her. And I had come from that, like, even prior to all those ages, 16, 17, and in the Victorian clubs. And I'd been in those training environments where everyone's in it for themselves. You out-touch me, like you beat me in a repeat in session, I don't want to go with you, I'm going to do freestyle, or I'm going to, you know, show you that I'm always going to be somehow beating you. And when I came back, I wanted Gracie and we just pushed each other day in, day out, and we loved it. But we did it for the togetherness, if anything.
Yeah, and now you're still great friends. So that shows you what can happen by embracing that kind of philosophy. That's awesome. Yeah. My buddies and I often do the variation of that famous Auburn sprint set.
Which one is that one?
How often did you guys have to do it when you were at Auburn?
Oh gosh, which one are you talking about? Refresh my memory.
So I think originally it was 125.
Oh, 100. Oh yes. Yes, I know that.
Yeah.
Yes, everyone has always asked me to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was that. It's funny, I can tell you, this is where I say that is probably one of the sets. So the sprinters would do 125s. Yeah. The middle distance would do 150s, and then the long distance would do 100s. So so same cycle of going, but that's where, you know, when I say an entire pool, we would have MSAC diving pool, all lanes, all same cycle, but everyone goes Like it's an incredible thing you can create.
Yeah.
100 I loved, because 25s can do. And what people didn't necessarily realize, and I could still, that mental rehearsal and how automated it is in my mind. I remember I was 11.7, 11.9, because I would do, so 50 of them backstroke, 50 of them freestyle. And as you got towards the like 50 to 125, the rest comes down. But the first 50 of would do 50 water, pop up right at 15, 11, 11, 9 within that range.
Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Rachel?
Oh no, we cut out.
That's okay. That's okay. I can edit that out. Don't worry.
Oh no, we cut out. I think that was me.
Oh, good. That's
Thank
okay.
you.
That's
What was
okay.
the last thing you heard me say?
You were explaining across the pool when you had the whole team and they were doing the hundreds, the 50s, and the 25s, and you were just before you cut out, you were talking about 11.7 and 11.
Oh yes.
And swapping, maybe go from when you did 50 of them backstroke and 50 of them freestyle.
Yeah. So this is where like the efficiency would come in, and like trying to hone in on your skills as a sprinter. So I could do 50 repeats, and each time the goal, like, so the coach would give us a goal and say, I want you to aim for this every time. So I think mine was 11.7 to 11.9 within a 0.2 age time frame to be hitting. I would do either 14, 15 kicks, pop up every single time right at 15 meters, 7 strokes, hit the wall, 11.7, 11.9, and I could do that 50 times on that time. And that's what when you're trying to hone in race pace and hone in on your absolute top speed, but then replicate it over and over again. That's what was so valuable about the sprint training that we did as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's not quite the level that me and my friends do it too, but that we're aiming for it.
Don't worry, I've done that. I literally have done that recently in the past year, and we would do like 30, 25s or 50, and we will set a goal of and I tell them like, count your kicks, count your strokes, pick a time, and just try to hit it every single time.
Yeah, it gets so much harder when that time starts descending, doesn't it?
Very. And I remember the last 10 is like nitty gritty, just go.
Yeah. Well, you probably
Good on you for doing it, by the way.
Sorry?
Good on you for doing it, by the way. It's really hard.
It's a hard set, yeah. I don't think we did. I don't think we actually finished it off to 100, but we got some of the way, so that's good. What prompted you to hang up your competition bathers?
Oh, I'm not sure. So I'm not sure if you know about my story towards the end of the career about my accident. And
only a little bit. So if you're happy to share that, yes, that'd be great to hear.
Yeah. So basically, actually, I always forget what the date was, but basically, it was 2012. That was the London Olympic trials that year. I obviously didn't make the team in 2012, and heavily competitive. I had the best. I mean, they were the best in the world. Emily Seebohm is one of your toughest competitors, and Bindi Hocking at the time didn't make the Olympics. And then we went on a holiday to Bali. So it was actually myself, Grace Lowe, and Carl Richardson. And we went to Bali. Unfortunately, I didn't do well with heat, but long story short, I fainted while I was on a moped, and I obviously had never done it before, but being a little bit of a big sister to Gracie, I was like, okay, I'll drive this one and give it a go, but I don't handle the heat well, given I've just got like body health issues where I don't sweat or internally regulate. And I actually fainted for the first time ever,
Yes.
on a moped in Bali. So I sustained a head injury. It's a bit tricky because it was still a third world country. I was in ICU for 4 days. I had most of the impact on my head. I was wearing a helmet, but at the end of the day, over there, they said I had like a cerebral edema, which is a brain bleed. I think that was an overestimate in a diagnosis, but I ended up having a fractured skull that I later found out from Monash Medical in Melbourne, because I had to go back to hospital. And then from that, I had Bell's palsy, where half your face, the nerves collapse. And any specialist and professional, when that happens, you know, they said to me minimum 6 months out, no swimming, no exercise. Like, we're talking a head injury. Head injuries, you can't sort of do anything to really make it better. The only thing that heals it is time. Had a specialist neurologist for a second opinion and said that I was able to, so worked with all the concussions and head injuries with AFL. Said that I could get back in to swimming 2 months later. So then I restarted that journey back in, and it was really tough. Like I was training with like the head injury thing. So I'm very lucky as a psychologist now. I did do the neuropsychology testing, and I don't have any impairment around like memory, concentration, functioning. I was actually doing my honours year, 4th year honours at the time, and I was writing my thesis, and I remember I was writing things and it was so hard to put that energy into concentration, but I would write like 3 sentences in one. And if you know me, I'm just a perfectionist writer, and I read over my things over and over again, but I wouldn't be able to compute what I was writing, relearning neural pathways in your body back in the gym, swimming while your face is kind of paralyzed. And I got back in the water 9 weeks later. Training was tough. Also from that, you know, I was so sensitive to sound and noise, and you're a bit more irritable given what's happening, and family, bless them, but you know, you're going through all of that. And then training was tough in terms of like every time I do a turn, because I couldn't, you know, I guess I probably should have used a nose clip, but I was just never really a fan of a nose clip. But every time you did a turn, I couldn't squish my nose, and I'm forever squeeze your nose, and water would just go straight up to your brain and burn. And I would just keep persisting because I wanted to make the World Championship short course team by December that year. Somehow I had made it all the way back, and that was the World Cup tour that I had 9 weeks, and somehow I got back on the bandwagon, and I was setting the fastest times that year in my event. And I think I just dedicated my entire mind, body, and everything to just get back and get to the team and make it. And I somehow made it back on the Australian team, favourite to win the 100 back. No one had swum faster that year. And what I talk about is this moment that I can just remember. I can almost put myself back in that space. In those competitions, it was Istanbul 2012, and every country had their little space. I'm lying on the floor and I'm just looking at the roof, headphones in, ready to go, 100 back final. I'm in lane 5, so ranked second. And no one in the Australian team yet had won a gold medal. And of course I was one of the favourites, or at least I think a medal. And probably at the time, in some ways, I know Poppy was like, oh, you can be the first, or you can be a gold medal. And it's kind of like, you don't want that in your head as an outcome. You want to stay in the process. But the thing about that was I just remember that moment, and headphones in, lying, ready to go, and not the right moment, not the best space for it to happen. But basically I had tears then rolling down my eyes from that moment, and then I had to sort of recoup and regather. And now as a psych and looking back, I can understand exactly what was happening. I did get myself back in. I wanted the fairy tale ending, but I ended up getting 4th, and I didn't swim my best race. Missed out on a medal. I think I got other medals in those and a relay medal, but that is still a memory for me, because I think I had put everything from my accident, as hard as everything was, and it just unloaded at the wrong moment.
Yeah.
And it's so important sometimes to just understand the power of what you feel, what you've gone through, and knowing how to stay in that optimal space. And I don't regret it. I just understand it. And it is, by the time I had gone at the end of my career, they had basically said my career essentially, and at the time I'm either going to end on you can't swim anymore, and you need to have minimum 6 months, 12 months out, or what I wanted, which was I wanted to make the team, have that be my last team, and I wanted to end it on my terms. And I just know myself, I would never have found the resolve if I didn't at least try.
Yes.
And I had to just go through that process and try, and I did it. And then after that meet, I feel like every ounce of motivation and things that I had to just take my entire career to there was absolutely done.
Absolutely. Oh, it's remarkable that you went through all of that and you were able to come back and get onto that team. I think that's such an achievement.
Thank you. I mean, it was one that shifted my entire perspective of life as well. I reflect back in just, I remember saying I spent more time appreciating that I was alive, and it took me a while to realize. It took my brother at some point to say to me, in that height of irritability and recovery, he's like, you don't realize another 1% another way, you could not be here anymore.
Right.
And Gracie is one of my I'm so grateful for Grace and Kyle. But even when I heard immediately after what I was saying to her, so I experienced traumatic amnesia, which is where I have a window of time, 24 to 48 hours, I just don't remember. And I remember waking up in so much pain. I think they cut my clothes off, in hospital. And when she told me, my heart broke, but I basically was saying things to her like, I'm so sorry, Gracie, I'm not going to make it, or if I'm not here. And I was basically saying my goodbyes to her. And I have no recollection of being able to, or of saying that. But even for her to be able to, to share that with her and know that I was saying that to her, that would have been an equally harrowing but difficult experience for her as well. We're on a holiday, we're overseas, and just, it was
Absolutely.
a lot.
How did they get you back here?
By the end, I was just so swollen. They pumped me up with so much fluids and IV fluids, but by the end, they gave me the okay to fly. My parents were on their holiday in Malaysia, but then had an urgent trip and just quickly flew to Bali. Wasn't the best in the hospital systems, because it was the one trip I didn't have travel insurance. And also being a third world country and how the systems work, I had so many tests done to me for financial gain on their part. Right. When I came back to Monash, a lot of it didn't have to be done, because CT scans don't need to be done that frequently. They wanted to check all these things. In the end, I came back to Australia, and actually that I was okay then. Within a week, then my Bell's palsy came and my face was then paralyzed. Then I went back to Monash Medical, and then they reviewed everything and told me sort of a more updated analysis and assessment of what I'd gone through.
Yeah. What an amazing story, Rachel. I mean, I want to congratulate you on being able to get through that and move on, and now have such a successful life as a clinical psychologist. That's amazing and wonderful that you've been able to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one that I always hold very close to my heart, and I am happy to share it in a space that now that I know that there are beautiful messages in it. It was tough. I have a whole different view of head injuries, one punch things that happen out there in the community, anything like that, because you realize how fragile life can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to move on and ask you a little bit about your work as a clinical psychologist. And I know you work with a lot of different conditions, but
Yeah.
one of them is performance psychology. How can that help athletes with their performance? What kind of tools do you give them to work towards their optimal performance?
Yeah. I work with many, I guess it's funny because performance psychology probably isn't, let's say, my specialty, in that I work with athletes on a mental health in a more, yes, clinical, but also looking at the entire athlete. Because when you look at things like, let's say, performance psychology, and it's one thing, if there are other things happening in how someone manages themselves or processes emotions or struggles to focus their attention, it will always impact performance.
Yeah.
So I probably look at it in that perspective. But one of the, I would say that psychological skills is for the mind, is what our exercise essentially is for our body. Our body is still our brain, yes, but there are so many skills in life that you almost in psychology have to learn by experience or by seeing a psychologist, or by lived experience. And it's nothing, or it's not really so mainstream that it's taught in schools, to learn how to manage your thought processes. How do you work through your mood when you're under such pressure and distress? What do you do? And that's the valuable thing that athletes, that I love to talk to them about now, is learning how to connect the mind, body, soul, and have that be in alignment. Because that's that thing, when that memory that I was talking to you about, when Stolly had said to me, back yourself.
Yeah.
In that moment, I can remember right now, like it's just everything fit into place perfectly. Nothing was my mind saying, oh no, I can't do this. I don't know, so-and-so's faster, she swam better. And I was like, everything living in the moment where it needs to be. And a good example I always explain to people is, everybody has had those races where you feel like you're dying, or you're dying too soon, or you just essentially are not present.
Yep.
Yeah. And I feel like everyone can almost hone in on that moment where your mind says, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I just want to finish, get to the end. Something like that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And if they start to learn and be aware, as soon as you have that thought, which is your mind, your entire brain and body and physiology will respond, which means in reality, you can be doing backstroke, feeling really good and pushing, and you push through the pain, and you get that one thought and you think, finish. All strength leaves your body, all power, the rating, the feel, it's not connected anymore. And when you're in those spaces, you won't perform as well as you'd like. You're not on track to be progressing, if anything,
Yeah.
And that's what I try to teach them. I mean, there's many things that we do, whether it's like a cue word or mental preparation is quite important, because, the power of visualization on another layer is also equally important. And I'm blessed that our sports psychologist, who's now one of my, I love her, but Lisa Stevens, she taught us how and the importance of visualization. So we would rehearse our races exactly in a really nice, perfect arousal space. And could you visualize your entire race, hitting every mark that you needed to? And we did it once or a few times where we'd visualize it and then time ourselves if we could get our goal time. Wow. And if when you're right on it, you can actually get your exact goal time, if not close to what you would naturally race. And when we practiced it, and I remember you used to practice, within half a second, it's not that much. And that's how much, because the brain doesn't differentiate what is a lived experience in reality versus what you're rehearsing, because it's the same pathways that you use.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice, and people need to practice more. It's sort of a skill that people focus in or hone in on the physical, but the mental is also of such high importance.
Yeah. And even when I was swimming, I had people tell me, at the Olympic Games or any final, you have 10 swimmers. So the most conditioned swimmers you will ever have in their life. Like no one's going to be fitter. You're at your absolute peak. Yet I was even told the person who wins on the day is the person who is the most mentally on top of their game and able to handle the pressures and execute, but stay in their lane in the process of just stroke by stroke. You don't want to think about Olympic gold medal. You want to think about, and that's where the Q words come in. Like I think I had one of my breaststrokers was like corners grip 1, corners grip, and they just needed to stay into the race, you know.
Yeah,
and mine was long and strong. I think long and strong.
Long and strong.
yeah.
And that's a way to get those sort of unwanted thoughts out of your mind because you're just thinking about the process.
Absolutely. And even now I've done it where even as I swim not at the same level, but I do know how to manage my physiology a bit better as well as my brain. It's kind of like, even when you're in the height of that absolute painful moment where you feel like you've got nothing left and you are not moving, you actually still can breathe effectively enough to work through that. And all you need to do at that point is like hold. You know, I tell myself all the time in those moments, it was like hold pace, like don't shorten. But if you breathe through that, it is just so much less painful, but you can get there.
And I think backstroke is particularly, you feel that in those last, when you hit that false lane rope, false start rope is what I'm trying to say, sorry. And you go into that, you know you've got 15 metres to go, and that is the most painful part of that race, isn't it?
Right, and if you think about the pain, it's so much worse. Whereas if you just keep yourself in the rhythm of the process and breathe through it and maintain efficiency, generally you're going to finish the race better.
Yeah, great advice.
Yeah.
I always like to ask everyone that comes on the podcast a fast 5 questions. So,
I love, yes.
Favourite pool that you've ever swum at?
Oh, God. The one that pops into my mind was, I don't even know what it's called. In Phuket, Thailand, I did a training workshop with a team there, but it was just this 50-meter pool surrounded by mountains and forest. It was just
beautiful,
stunning. So you're just doing a session and there's just greenery all around you. It was beautiful, and it was a training academy there.
A training, yeah. Is that big? That's a sports resort that's there.
Yeah, a sports.
Yeah. Therampura or something.
Yes, Thanyapura. Yes. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, so it looks beautiful. Are you a kick or pool girl?
Oh, I like both, but kick. It would make sense. My underwater, my legs are always a favorite. So of course I was thriving in the kick space.
Love it. What's your favorite psych up music song before you raced?
Oh my God. You know, this is funny because I know this one. And this is the one I learned with my sports psych at the time, or Lisa at the time. That was, if you hear Chino in the background, sorry, he's having a cough. He's like waking up. Favorite song was Sia, Bulletproof. And sorry, I thought it was coming. And I remember because, and it goes in line with that memory, back yourself, because I used to plug my headphones in and there was this tunnel to the pool, and I'd put it in, put her on repeat, and it says something like, oh, it was not bulletproof, it was titanium, I think. Okay. And it says, I'm bulletproof, I'm titanium. Something about if you can't fall, like I won't fall, I will blah, blah. And it's just those words I had on repeat in my mind.
Oh, that's a good one. I like it.
Yeah, it's really good.
Favorite backstroke drill?
Oh, I was about to say double arm backstroke, but no, that was just more comfortable. That was just easy. It was spin. So spin drill, seated spin drill. I used to just do it to get the energy power up, and really short bursts prior to a race and a warm up.
Right. How many strokes in a spin drill?
Maybe like 10 to 16, just getting power, and getting that in and getting that feel, and then moving on. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And favorite all-time training set?
Ooh. Probably the 100 hundreds, or I don't even know how I did these at the time. I'm not 100 hundreds, 125s, that Auburn sprint set. Otherwise, we also did an Auburn underwater set. Hard, but I loved it. We would do underwater sets, and we would do hundreds yards, and you could only breathe at the walls and then do them for time. But there were ones where you would have to do the last lap of every repeat underwater, but it would start from the flags underwater and then into the last 25 all underwater.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that all
I used to love those.
Was that all dolphin kick on your back?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Because it was super challenging, but because I got so on top of breathing and underwater, it wasn't as challenging. Like I could work on getting those minimum requirements and then work on getting there faster and perfect the skill.
Oh yeah, that's a great set. Sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, like not easy. And when you're puffed and you're just trying to hold your breath, it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a delight catching up with you again after all these years and seeing you so successful and happy in your career, and wishing you every, sense of good luck moving forward.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Absolutely love these conversations and bringing these memories back. They're so valuable in my life, so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, take care.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.